thought that doing a show, I waited a long time to do it. There was things I had to say, but I always felt that somebody else would do it better. But this is an opportunity, and I think a time in my life to really share, mainly with women, and I don't want to forget any gentlemen that are out there, but I think women have some real serious issues about their health and in their weight. And so I thought I'd start the show by just telling you a little bit about me, so you'd know I've been there and I've done that, and I'm just not another person who's lost some weight or another pretty face out there. That I've lived the traumas of obesity. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I had a sister who was perfect. You know, she was a Walter Thornton model. I was always compared to her. And actually, she ate my father under the table. I was a very small eater, but I kept putting on weight. I used to think that I was like bread, you know, yeast. I kept getting bigger and bigger. And sure, I did a lot of cheating, but you know, in the summer, we'd go to a cottage, and I didn't have the ice cream and the chocolates every day. It was really controlled. And it was amazing that every year I'd come back and I'd put on 10, 12 pounds, and my father hated fat. I mean, I knew that from when I was just a really little kid. He'd always find the next doctor, this little god who was going to make his kid thin, and make the appointment, and my mother would take me and we'd get on the right food program. Of course, you know, you don't have to be too stupid, you know, after you realize that all these doctors gave the same 1,000-calorie diet, and oftentimes I would put on weight. I remember one time in particular, I was 12 years old, and I had a real crush on a fellow, and I thought, well, okay, I'm going to stay on this diet. So we went to this new doctor, who, by the way, I want to tell you is overweight, who said to my mother, if she follows the food program that I'm giving her, I guarantee when she comes back, she'll have lost at least 2 pounds. Everybody is successful. So that was pretty positive. Well, I want to tell you, I didn't cheat. Now, I do have to tell you, I didn't have a good track record, because I had a best friend who used to keep my chocolate bars in her locker at school, and I did a lot of cheating. But this time, I didn't cheat at all, and I came back, and I had put on a ½ a pound. And this doctor turns around and looks at my mother like I wasn't even there. And just like this says, well, Mrs. Goblat, she's been cheating or she had lost weight. Well, I was just devastated because I knew I hadn't cheated. Now, from that point on, I knew there was really something wrong with me. And if the doctor couldn't find out what it was, nobody was going to find out what it was. And so for many, many years, I didn't try losing weight at all. And of course, I would go up. Then I started again trying to do the diets, and I don't have to tell any of you all the diets. You know, we've done them all. Actually, the ones that work the best are the ones I did myself. I mean, I knew I shouldn't be eating the bread. I knew I shouldn't be eating all the potatoes. I mean, we know the potato chips, you know, the chocolates. We're all experts. If we could keep off those foods forever, we'd all be gorgeous. But none of us can keep off it, because later on I found out there was something wrong with your system. When your system craves certain things, it's telling you that something's not working right for you. Because obviously God didn't make our bodies to be junk. He made them okay. It's just what we've done to them. Well, I eventually moved from Toronto and came to Los Angeles and lost weight, put on weight. You know, the whole rigmarole that we all have been through. And it doesn't matter if it's 10 pounds or 100 pounds. If 10 pounds is serious to you and you've always been thin, it's like 100 pounds to somebody who's 100 pounds. It doesn't happen overnight, and it was just gradual, and I eventually got up to 311 pounds. I remember one day bending down to put on a pair of shoes. Now this was about, I'd been on, I'm not going to tell you which program, but I did lose weight. Actually, I was looking pretty good. And of course I went off the diet. I don't know what happened to emotionally upset me, but I went off it, and of course I put the weight back on. Not only that weight, but probably another 25, 30 pounds, as we all do, because it messes up our set point. And I went to bend down. I was going out with some friends to do up a pair of lace shoes that I hadn't put on for a long, long time. And believe it or not, I could not reach my shoes. And I had a boyfriend at the time, and he just thought it was that time of the month, you know. Don't worry about it, I'll do it up for you, because weight wasn't an issue for him. There are guys who really like heavy women. And I was never slob, so it didn't matter to him. But I knew at that point I was going to die. And that was really the first revelation that if I didn't do something and do something soon, the party was going to be over. Because if you can't bend down, I never had the fat in front. It was always on my thighs and in the back. And it's funny, I went up I was a 26 and a half. I mean, if they had had big fat models then, I'd have been terrific. I mean, forget it. I had to lose my weight, and then they had all the fat models. I've never been in right timing. But anyway, I eventually lost 80 pounds. And with that 80 pounds, who knew anything about nutrition? I lost most of my hair. I got a terrible acne condition. Now, those were the only two things I had going for me. Everybody used to say my complexion was great. I had beautiful hair. So you can imagine the only thing that I had was now gone. The strange thing to me was that nobody said anything about my complexion or pimples on my face or that my hair looked terrible. I mean, it was literally falling out. It was when, you know, all the blonde was in front and the dark was in the back, and it was a style. There was nothing to hardly put a roller on. Everybody would tell, you're looking great. And I realized then, and it wasn't just one person, that all you are is a body. All they saw was my shape. Didn't they see that I felt terrible? I knew I looked terrible, and nobody commented. And I guess that made the biggest impression on me. How people never asked how you were feeling. It was all these, oh, you're really looking great. What size are you now? It was all, how much have you lost? That's all I would hear is, how much have you lost? Like, that's all you are is a number. And it stayed inside. You know, I kept going, I said, God, you're like a no person. What an awful way to have to live. That's all you are. No wonder thin people are anorexic. At least I knew fat was my drug of choice, if you will. I later on found a nutritionist through a friend, and he took one look at me and he says to me, I can't do anything wrong with you. He says, you're really nutrient deficient. Well, at first I didn't like him because I didn't think he was just being very kind. You know, here I'd lost all this weight and people are telling me how good I look, and he's telling me I'm a mess, literally. So he puts a supplement program together for me, brings out all these vitamins, and actually didn't do any lab work or anything, but he came highly recommended. And I remember I had to drive over an hour and I'm geographically challenged, so to drive an hour any place is a big thing for me. But I didn't want to tell anybody, you see, because then they think there was something really wrong with me. And here I was loving being, I'm looking good, you know. So I end up going to this fellow, and he brings out all this stuff. I says, I can't take all these. And he just looks at me and he says, well, when you feel bad enough, come back. And I thought, I don't like him at all, but I had nowhere else to go, and I had nobody to ask, didn't trust anybody. I'd always had thin friends, so I wasn't going to divulge all this. So I took all this stuff home. He says, if you have anything left, bring them back. Well, obviously I wasn't too smart, because what happened, I started taking them, and who could eat? I was so busy taking one thing at a time that by the time it was like meal, or in between the meal, I was full. So of course I was going to lose more weight. I said, I should have thought of this kind of diet before. Just take pills and you're in all this water and you're so bloated you're not going to want to eat. Well, my hair actually stopped falling out a lot at about 4 days later, 5 days later. I mean, it was coming out in like chunks. I was afraid to brush my hair. And I figured, oh, this is just a fluke, you know? So I stopped taking all of it. I probably cut down about half. Because really, I'm still a foodaholic. I want to eat. And of course, I'm doing this in secret, so I can't eat with anybody else because they're going to know that I'm taking all this stuff, and I don't want them to know. So I finally go back to him, I guess it was about 2 or 3 weeks later, and he asked me how I'm doing. I says, well, my hair is not falling out as much. I have a little more energy, but I'm still really tired. And then he proceeds to ask me, well, do you have any supplements left? So of course, I went in my purse very obediently, and I bring up the bag. And he says to me, well, how come you have all these left? And all of a sudden it hit me. I am not as smart as I thought. He had these all counted out for as many days as I needed to take this until my next appointment. So he said, well, you know, he says, you better get some serious about your health. So I finally listened to him, and things changed, and I started to get better. And then he invited me to a seminar as his guest. Well, it was free, okay. And so I had to drive all the way back out to Orange County, which again, I was in Los Angeles and Encino, so that was a good hour and some drive. And I went in, sat down, and mostly women, as usual. There was a few men in there, and he started talking. Well, his whole seminar, as far as I was concerned, was about me. And I said, well, no wonder he invited me for nothing. He's using me as an example. Well, all of a sudden, he started talking about food combining and things like that. And before, as I was thinking it, I hear this voice behind saying, isn't that the truth? And I'm turned around and all these women are like shaking their head. It wasn't just me. They were feeling the same way. And I thought I was alone. There was something really wrong with me. And this light just opened up, and afterwards I said to him, could you suggest some books I read? This is really interesting. You know, I didn't know that other people dealt with this. He says, yeah, you're a classic case. He says, other than the fact that you have, you know, bad thyroid condition, he says, it's very common. And so I said, well, again, can you give me some books? He says, I suggest you go back to school. Well, you know, I didn't like the guy to begin with. I really needed him, though. And he was involved in a college in Orange County. It was actually a school without walls, or university without walls. And he said, that's the best way. He said, I said, I don't want to go back to school. I hated school. And then he starts with me, well, why'd you hate school? I said, because I was a fat kid. I didn't feel like I belonged. I mean, I was great in sports and things that were music, but I really didn't like school. He said, that's because you didn't have any interest. You have an interest now. I said, but I don't want to go back to school. He said, well, you should think about it. I said, can't you just tell me some books to get? He said, no, there's lots of books in the bookstore. I said, no, I've read probably most of them. They don't work. He says, well, if you want to learn properly, you need to learn as books are put out for degrees. So I thought about it for a while. And then I said, well, you know, it wasn't going to cost that much, but at least I'd get the right books. So I signed up. It was at Union University. I don't even think they're there anymore. But it was really interesting. I really loved it. I did very well. I sent, and it was all correspondence, sent in my answers, and they were coming back, and I was getting really high marks. I was feeling pretty proud of myself. I need to tell you, though, I never told anybody I was doing this because if I failed, I didn't want anybody to know about it. Well, later on, he started his own university, again, a school without walls, and this guy was brilliant, but he was bucking the traffic, so everybody was after him. And but I had a wonderful education, and I got a second Bachelor of Science. I got my master's and my PhD in nutrition. But then you finish with all this, and it's funny, I wrote my dissertation on, what would I write it on? Fat, you know, so I wrote on overweight and obesity and the different ways of getting slim or thin, whatever it is, and doing it healthy. And I wrote it in book form. It's the first time a dissertation was written in book form because I couldn't understand the ones that I had seen, so I went and asked if I could write it, and I got an approval, like chapters, because I think organized that way. Well, then the first time I remember sitting down at the computer and I wrote the word bibliography. I got to tell you, I wasn't even sure what it was, and I spelt it wrong. But anyway, I'm good at other things, I think. But anyway, I sent it in, and it took about 6 weeks because it had to go to different PhDs and different medical doctors to read it, to get tested. And on a Thursday afternoon at 20 after 4, on my way out the door to go to a sushi bar, I get this call, and this girl on the phone said, "Hi, Dr. Henry?" And "No, sorry, you've got the wrong number." Put the phone down on her. A couple of minutes later, the phone rings again, and she said, "Don't hang up, Rhonda, don't hang up." I said, "Who's this?" She says, "It's Elizabeth." And she was the head gal at the educational department of school. She says, "You made it." I says, "I made it?" She says, "Yeah, you got it." I says, "You're kidding." She says, "Well, what were you working so many years for?" I says, "I don't know." I says, "But I can't believe it." She says, "Believe it." Well, this was me before, obviously, and I never, you always see fat pictures, the before and after. You see the fat person on the one side and the thinner person on this side. And I always felt that I was a thin person in a fat body. I actually used to say to people, I think God made a mistake because I never thought fat, even though I obviously was. So when I went to do press pictures, it was always me coming out of where I was. And people often say to me, "Well, that doesn't look like a real picture." Well, I told them I didn't take pictures when I was fat, and thank God I had this one from a broken Polaroid camera that some people took about 7-8 months at 20th Century Fox to bring it up to this point, so at least I would have a before picture and have some proof that I had been there. And of course, I had the doctor's letters that I had been that fat. But believe it or not, this has given people more hope than anything, because when I do seminars and people see me now, they can't relate to me being 311 pounds. So this is there, and you see them how they're looking at me first, trying to listen to what I'm saying, but their eyes will always go to the picture. And God, maybe that was really her. They're still trying to believe it. So this was something that I think is really worthwhile to other people. I hate to look at it myself because I can't even see me there anymore. But I've always said it was never about fat, it's about health. And if there's a message that I can get through to people is don't worry about the weight, stop going on diets. They don't work, obviously. We're all successful at doing our own diets, and we've done many. And that's why there's so many books out. Until you learn how to take care of your health and get your health right on a cellular level, you'll constantly lose weight and put it back plus each time. And that's the message I really want to give to people. That is about health. It is not about weight. When your body is in good health, the weight comes off automatically. You don't have to starve yourself. This is not about deprivation. That's why the first 3 letters of the word diet are D-I-E. Nobody that I know has ever been successful doing it. So let's just try to eat more healthy.